Morning, everyone. I'm delighted to have all of us able to get together this way without needing to get in the car and drive. So one of the things that we experience at AENE is that our children have a number of challenges, whether it's going to be emotional regulation or understanding social context or a great variety of difficulties. And whatever those difficulties are, more often than not, the result may be some behaviors that either confound us, confuse us, or not quite the behaviors that we're looking for. So a lot of things turn into behavior, and that's why this workshop has been a very important standard building block that we provide for families. So we're going to take a look at different strategies and ideas for helping you to understand and manage your children's behavior. So the first question I'm going to be asking, if you would help me out, everyone, is to let me know whether you could maybe just put this in the chat box. Could you just give me an idea of the ages of your children so that I just have that perspective as we move along? Could you ask that?
All right. So I am seeing a few 11-year-olds, a 6-year-old, a 19, a 13, and a couple more 11 and 12-year-olds.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's great. Now here is my guess. My guess is that you're choosing to take this webinar perhaps just for general information, but it's not very unusual that some particular behavior may be bringing you to our group today. And I'm wondering, is there a behavior that is particularly confusing to you? Why does it happen? Or a particular behavior that's very, very frustrating and you would love to have an answer before the webinar is over? Or certain things that you would like to manage? If you don't mind chatting that in, so that I have a sense of what's the most pressing issue that might have brought you today. If you're just here for general information, you don't need to chat something in. But if something's on your mind, I would love to know, because my goal always is before the webinar is over, we've tried to address whatever your particular concern is. So I'm going to be quiet for a second and ask you to chat in if you're here for some pressing reason.
One person is typing in managing generalized anxiety. One is lack of motivation. And I'm not sure, for the person who wrote in lack of motivation, if you want to clarify, that would be helpful. Another is emotional outbursts with adolescence, that it's becoming a strain on the family dynamics. Another is overcoming defeatism. One is general strategies. Their child is 5 and is new. And is new to AS. And then the last is calming, that their child loses their executive function and their calming skills when they get upset.
Okay. Thank you so much for giving me that feedback. And I'm very happy to say that all the concerns that I have heard right now are all going to be included in this webinar. So there is hopefully going to be something that everyone is going to be able to take away. So the first thing I want to talk about is that we need to get to know ourselves very well, because our goal, and one of the goals of doing this webinar, is that we take a look at our own behavior and try to think about what are our triggers. Is that constant messy room a trigger, or whining is a tough one? Just constant whining, or bottom left is kids bickering with each other and a lot of sibling challenges of not getting along. Or one that's always been a trigger for me is screaming or yelling. as a way of them to let us know how unhappy they are. What are your triggers? And I think we want to really kind of think about that because we want to disarm ourselves. We want to see what we can do to calm some of the things that are going on within us as well. So we're going to talk about behavior management. Now, the goal in behavior management is that the scale on the left, which is lower, is showing that there are more positive interactions going on between you and your child than the side on the right, which would be those corrective moments where you say something that is either correcting or you're angry or whatever, that we're going to try to have more positive interactions than any form of negative interactions. So to do that, see the arm, the bar that goes out to the left and out to the right. That kind of represents how many skills have you got in your pocket for you to weigh down the positive side and have less negative interaction. So our goal today is going to be to give you more strategies on that left positive side to make home life for everybody in the family more comfortable. So we've started to really think about that there are sometimes our kids, because of their neurological differences, they're not exactly sure, what the heck is actually the purpose of a family? What are families for? What's good about this little organization? So we talk about the idea that families have a purpose for being. The purpose of having a family is listed in that first bullet, is that we are the core group that would be kind to each other and keep everybody in our group safe. So that's kind of what the purpose of a family is about. We want to be kind to each other. We want to keep each other safe. And then the last part I always add in my head, and we help every member of the family to get what they need. So what we're going to talk about is whenever we do house rules or any kind of rules in your house, we do what we call the family plan. And the family plan means that there aren't rules for one child that wouldn't be the same rules for any other child in the family, and that they're also the same for mom and dad. So as one example, if there's no swearing in the house, then nobody swears in the house, and that's fair. And our kids, who are run very much about what's fair, have to do with what's logical. And so we keep a family plan so that all rules are the same for all the family members. And we're always going to keep in mind that the purpose of all family rules is, we want to love each other and care about each other. We want to be safe, and we want to get each of us what we need. And what this also means is parents rate and are as important to get their needs met as well as any sibling or any special needs child. We're all on the same level on the playing field. So what we talk about is all family members need to follow the rules. We're all in this together. And if you need rules, and let me just back up and say one thing. Some families are doing just fine. If you don't have issues in your home where behavior in some way affects the family, you don't need to do this. This is what do you do if some behaviors are literally getting in the way of smooth functioning within your family, okay? So you don't do things you don't need, but if you need them, here are some good ideas. And one of them is to start to post. And whenever you have house rules, you post them, you put them up. And if the kids eventually can reiterate them in their sleep and they know them really well, fine. You may not need them to be posted anymore. But in the beginning, it's the best way to start having some structure in the household. Why do we do this? So I think the idea is normally in a family, something goes right, you say, great, so-and-so, good job. Or if it isn't going well, you say something, oh, you forgot to do this or you need to do that, and there's some kind of corrective statement. But if there's a little imbalance in your family, there seem to be a lot of those corrective statements. And what you don't want to do is constantly out of your mouth do a lot of negative feedback to your children. So if there's a rule, as an example, we don't eat snacks in between meals. That's just, I'm arbitrarily picking that. And that's posted. Then you never have to go to your child and say, no snacks in between meals, that's not what we do. You don't have to do all that. All you would do is you point to the rule and say, oh, I'm sorry, hon, that isn't something we could do. So what you're doing is instead of coming across negatively, you want to come across with empathy, because you're feeling that they wish they could have it. You wish you could abide by that. But look at that rule. The rule says that we don't eat in between meals. So what you're doing is let the rules kind of be the bad cop so that you can be the good cop and empathetically feel what they're feeling and help to support them. So another thing that's within our control is, I know for me and for many parents I work with, when you're thinking about what your child did that is an unexpected behavior that you don't like, we sometimes will use words like obstinate or disrespectful, or, oh, my child is unwilling to do this, that, or the other thing, or he's lazy. If we use those kinds of words, which are evaluative words, it kind of leads us into thinking we have to do those corrective statements. We have to fix this. We have to change this. And so it puts us back, putting more other interactions with our child on that negative side of the scale. So what will be really, really important for us to do in your own head now is to try to switch some of those words. If you catch yourself using those words in your head, you try to use these more empathetic words that, my child gets so confused with social interactions, or, yeah, I think this is all being driven by that social anxiety. And yeah, you know, I know he doesn't have quite as many coping mechanisms, so that's going to be something I have to think about. And always remember that our kids are doing these behaviors not because they want to be a pain, but because they're honestly doing the best they can at the moment with the skills that they have. So for us, it's always about skill building. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Another thing that's very much in our control is to avoid those triggers that get our kids going. And I'm sure for a number of you, there are certain words that can set your child off. Can anybody write in a word that you know? The one example I put here on bullet number 2 is no, that trigger. But are there other triggers that you are aware of that you know will get your kiddo going in a negative way?
I'm not seeing anything just yet, but I did want to point out 2 more people typed in challenges that they're having at home, and one is struggles with self-esteem, and the other is feeling hopeless and depressed.
Okay, thank you.
So here are a couple of triggers. Definitely no, and then relax, try not to let that bother you.
Okay, so here's the idea with avoiding triggers. When you have a child do some kind of behavior and your first reaction is to say, no, you can't do that now, or any way that you're not going to be able to come back with a positive response, what I want us to start thinking about is how to use what's called contingency management. Now, what contingency management is that the first thing you try to do is make some form of agreement statement first. So let me give an example. Mommy, I really want ice cream. It's 2 in the afternoon. And you know that in your household, we do not have ice cream in the middle of the afternoon because our kiddos won't eat any dinner. So instead of in any way saying, no, you can't have ice cream, it's only 2 in the afternoon, or anything along the lines of negative, what you try to do first is come up with something that validates their feeling. That's that empathy first, non-confrontive that is mentioned in the first bullet. And it would be, oh, wow, I bet I sometimes just crave ice cream too. I get, you know, that's really what we wish we could have whenever we want it. I wish I could just have ice cream anytime I think about it. Unfortunately, it gets in my way of eating dinner. So let's look at the rules about eating in between. Oh, wow. We do have a house rule right now that we're not going to have any kind of ice cream until it's dessert time. Or the reason in bullet number 1, I wrote down that there's a requirement, and that's for the kind of thing like, I don't want to clean my room. You know, I don't clean my room. Oh, and then what you're going to do is say, no, I bet you don't want to clean your room. I get that. It's a pain in the neck. And I don't like doing chores too, but we would have to have the room clean before the TV goes on. That may be part of your house rule. So the idea is trying to avoid that you say no and try and put it in wording that is sort of like trying to say yes. So an example, and I put some below where it says try, when your room is clean, then I can turn on the TV. So when then is telling them when they can have it, and you're not focusing on a trigger word like no, you can't have it, or take a look at the second quote, as soon as. Oh, boy, I would love that ice cream. As soon as we have our dinner, I'm dying to think about it. I wonder what we have in the fridge today. I wonder what our options are. But you're going to put it off. You're going to come across that you're paying attention to how they feel. You're not saying yes and you're not giving in, but you're trying to take away some of the triggers. Or as long as is another one. As long as your homework's done, then I'd love to sit down and play a game with you. Mommy, can we play a game? Can we play a game now? So instead of anything that's no, you try to use some of these statements. Can anybody just send me one example of something that you would have to turn around and say no to, but your child might be asking it over and over and over and over? Give me an example. I want to turn it around.
Tech time, technology time.
Oh, technology time is a huge issue in our families because our guys love technology. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about is when and how kids have tech time. And what I often feel is that tech time is not something you get 24 hours a day. It comes within time blocks. There could be some stipulations of what has to be done before you get your tech time. So the example might be a house rule is 1 hour of tech time after homework is completed, or another half hour of tech time when your chores are done, and the chores have to be very clearly indicated. So when someone says, I want tech time, I want my phone or my this or that, you'd say, oh, yeah, I know how much you love to do that, sweetie. Let's look at what time you can have it. And oh, as soon this on our house rules, it says as soon as your homework's done, oh, you would get an hour or a half an hour or whatever you set up as the expectation. So you come across as sensitive to their feelings. You're not trying to put that red flag in front of a bull and say, no, you can't. You say, oh, as long as, or when then, or as soon as, and it comes across to them in a more positive way than them feeling, oh, she said no again, or he said no again, which can be a trigger for our kids. So our whole idea is to create some structure within the house that takes care of some behaviors so you can be the positive, empathetic, fun-giving mom instead of you're kind of the policeman of the house. So you start with the idea of house rules. And the second thing that's really important is that positives, which could be tech time, it could be playing a game with your child, it could be something outside of the house, it could be going for ice cream, it could be whatever those positives are. Those are the positive sides. And consequences would be if something is abused, you wouldn't continue to use that technology right now. Those kinds of natural consequences, they're never random. So in this new system, you would never get mad. It would not be part of the deal that you could get mad and take away something unexpectedly. So if the rule is that if you throw your blocks at your brother, then you wouldn't be playing with blocks for a while. That's not unexpected, that's expected. So that would be a natural consequence that you would lose that privilege. But if you throw blocks at your brother and an unexpected negative comes to your mind, I'm going to teach you, you would not be doing that because to them, random behavior, they cannot process how to get in front of it and stop it for next time. So randomness doesn't work for our kids. Understanding the rules and then following the rules is the strongest way for them to learn new patterns. And what we're looking for them is they're filled with a bunch of habits. if I don't get my way, I yell and scream. If something happens, I tantrum. There are a lot of things that our kids get into because of lack of knowing a better skill set. But they get used to these habits. And the best way to break habits for all of us is to have some good positives to work for and to have some consistency of how do you work this game? How do you play this so that I can win? So consistency is so important. I personally am a big believer in social rewards rather than getting you another little toy truck or getting you this or getting you that. Now, there are times that our kids are so attached to having a little collection of something that it's not a bad idea that if they have changed their behavior pattern and it's been a long, challenging route to get there, that you don't use some physical rewards. But the best reward to me is always your time to play with them, to do exactly what they want to do. Even if to you it's like, why are we doing this? This isn't very helpful. Because what our goals for our kids would always be is social connectedness. That's one of the big challenges for our kids. So in any way, if your reward can be also benefiting a skill set you want your children to have, to me, it's the most important thing you can ever give is your time to do what they want to do. And then our goal for ourselves is that I'm going to try really hard that I don't react from something inside of me. And goodness knows, I have gotten angry. My family's gotten angry. Parents get angry. I mean, your kids do unexpected behaviors and you're like, you have got to be kidding me. Why are we doing this in the middle of grandma's birthday party or whatever? But the more we can react out of something that makes sense to our kids, and then I think you have a much better chance of having positive reactions. So here are the 4 cardinal sins, and they're really tough for us. You don't nag. And what nagging is defined as is telling them to do something or not to do something over and over and over again. Because what they learn from nagging is, I don't want to listen to mom anymore. I'm going to tune you out. I'm not going to pay attention. So if you've ever had to repeat yourself about a particular behavior, make sure it becomes a house rule. And then the house rule takes care of it. If they do that behavior, you go, oh, wow. And you'd point to the house rule, and the whole house rule sets up that there may be a natural consequence if you're doing that behavior. So it isn't on you. It isn't your words all the time that are driving what happens in the household. The ground rules, the house rules, help to control those things, and then you can be more of a positive influence. So along with that, similar to nag, which is just a little longer in time, is the lecture. Don't lecture. You wouldn't have a lot of talks about negative things. If you want to have a talk, you would have a talk about positive changes so that they realize over time that if they do something inappropriate, you don't give them your time, your words, your energy. There might be a natural consequence that's part of the house rules. But when you want to sit down and have chats with them is over everything positive, doing a good job at some specific skill, showing that you appreciate attributes that they have, because these are also self-esteem builders very much, is that you focus on letting them know, what are you good at? What have you improved? What are the changes you've made? Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to see you've been able to. And so if there's going to be a verbal interaction, make it positive. The other one that's so tough, the third one down, is our kids often have lots of language. Do any of you have a kiddo who's a master at arguing?
Yes. I see some very strong yeses.
I would say one of the wonderful things that is a strength for our kids is they can have very good vocabulary and they have a wonderful ability to argue their case. Sometimes we think, oh, they should all grow up and be attorneys. But arguing is one of their strengths. And one of the ways to disengage from arguing is that if they want something or they want to get at some privilege and it's breaking those ground rules, then what you would do is, oh, hon, I'm so sorry. We're not going to be able to do that. And you just point to the ground rules. And what you're doing is you're not continuing to argue your side. Because if you argue your side, it's like you just sent some verbal ammunition over to them for them to feel free to turn around and argue their side back again. And you can go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And that's the challenge. So the key to arguing is how to disengage. How can you not be disrespectful, like turning on your heel and walking away in the middle of them talking, but basically refuse to argue back? And what you'd have to do is have something that says, oh, I wish we could, hon, but, and then the house rules help to kick in, and that is what you fall back on. And the last one many parents are shocked by. As parents, we often walk up to our kids and start a conversation to talk about something they did wrong. And what that is unscheduled, spontaneous correction. And we often think, well, gee, that's my role as a parent. I'm supposed to be guiding and correcting my child. But if the child has an ongoing difficulty, let's say bad table manners at dinner, or constantly interrupting, or it's a repeated challenge for your child, what's so helpful to them is that you say, hey, kiddo, I just want to talk to you about how dinner time runs. When's a good time when we could sit down and talk about that? That is so different to your child than you just saying, come here, sit down, let's talk about dinner, because it's like they've been blindsided. So let me just make an example for you. If you were suddenly called into your boss's office unexpectedly, and your boss says, sit down, I want to talk to you about how you're using your time or something, your heart rate would just increase. You would have anxiety responses because you don't know what's coming. You don't know how bad is bad. How should I feel about this? So it immediately puts you on the defensive. That's kind of an automatic response for us. And that same thing happens to our kids when you give that unscheduled, spontaneous advice. So there are times, if your child has done something dangerous, like walk in the middle of a street, and you have to respond that minute, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those times when they ongoingly do something that's just not working and you wish you could have a better plan for the future. So try and see if you can just say, hey, could we talk about this sometime today? What's good for you? You want to do it before this or after that? And then they know what's coming and what the subject matter is, and you'll have less defensiveness. And I think we all know our kids have more anxiety than most kids do. They carry a lot of anxiety around. And when you're a highly anxious person, that kicks in a sympathetic nervous response, which is fight and flight. And when our kids are experiencing that, they're not open to learning new things. They're busy protecting themselves. So that's why we try to do that. So some of the instead things to do, instead of some of the previous strategies you might have been using, is that there's a lot of less talk. And you're going to try to do empathetic statements. And another thing I wrote down is low and slow. And the reason I wrote that is if your child is highly anxious and you come in with a louder voice or a higher pitch voice, it's a sign of anxiety, anger, distress. So you want to lower your volume and you want to lower the timbre of your voice and then speak very slowly. One of the common challenges our kids have, and it's pretty common, is that they have some slower language processing speed. So if you want to make an appointment and have a point of really helping your child change their behavior, you wouldn't want to give a lot of language and you wouldn't want to speak fast. So lower that volume. The more you can almost talk a little over a whisper, the better, because it isn't so frightening, and slow yourself down. So we talked about making an appointment to give them some feedback they may need to hear. And the idea of feedback is never, I want to tell you something you're doing wrong. It's, wow, how could we do better at dinner time? How could we make a plan to make something work more effectively for you. Your goal is always, it's not just don't do something, it's helping them to know what to do. So the next one down is as much as possible. Instead of saying, oh, what you did really hurt my feelings, what you did, and talk a lot about feelings, if you use logic, often logic statements, it often can be very helpful. You know, if you're saying those kind of words to your sister, she won't want to play with you anymore. If you always want to do just what you want to do, she won't want to play with you, rather than discussing a lot about her feelings. Logic usually is a little more helpful for them to see the consequence of their interactions with others. And then we talked already about trying to disengage from any kind of argument. Do any of you find that your child responds really well to humor? Anybody?
Yes. Yes, there are a few coming up that they do.
The more you want to use humor, if it works for you, it's a great avenue. It's a positive way for you guys to interact. And here's our goal from this whole webinar, is that we're going to try and slowly increase the number of minutes per day that you're enjoying each other's company and decrease the number of minutes that you feel you need to do some corrective work. So I know that at least one person, maybe more than one of you, has actually experienced outbursts with your child, a real kind of explosion. And what we're talking about is not, it's not manipulative behavior where I just want to have my own way and so you better give me what I want. But sometimes our kids kind of go into overdrive too much. It's a real meltdown where they are not in control at this moment, and what are we going to do to try and prevent that there are explosions? So I want to just look for a second at this meltdown cycle. Your child, when they are calm and feel safe, those are called teachable moments. So that's on the left side of this screen. There are teachable moments when your child is calm and feels safe, and we can teach them new skills. That's great. But sometimes stress builds up. It could be too many changes in my day. It could be I don't have the lunch of my choice. It could be something I was counting on is not going to be able to happen today. And there are early signs of stress. And when you become more attuned as a parent to pick up what those rumbling behaviors are, stress is going up. You want to become as skilled as you can to see those early signs of distress. Some parents say, my child doesn't give me any warning. It goes from 0 to 60 in a heartbeat. And the more we try to take a few minutes to see what was happening right before the time you picked it up, we start to become more skilled at seeing rumbling behaviors. Can any of you write in that you're aware of anxiety signs or stress signs for your child when rumbling is happening? Do they speak fast or pull their hair, or there are a great variety of ways that our kids show us stress. Could you let me know if you are aware of any rumbling stress signs for your child?
One is saying that it's taking the child longer to come back to resting position when they're starting to get aggravated. Another one is saying clenched face, squinting eyes, facial and glazed eyes.
Yep. Now, just for you to know, these are classic situations where you could have twisting hair. Their tone of voice goes up or it goes down. Their volume goes up or it goes down. You could see pacing behavior. You could see wringing their hands. You could see making fists. You can see sweaty hands. You can see a great variety of things happening during the rumbling phase. What is a reality is if we are not able to shut it down by decreasing their stress way over on the left side of this bell-shaped curve, then what we have to do is we just have to comfortably get them through the meltdown. So the meltdown is a time where pretty much they're not open to receiving new information. So what we don't want to do is try to talk to them a lot, do anything much during the explosion. You just want to keep them safe. and get to the other side of the explosion. So you wouldn't do a lot of talking. If you think they're not safe in what they're doing, then you want to make sure they're safe. If they throw things and can destroy property or do a lot of that kind of thing while they're rumbling, you want to see if you can get them to what would be their safe space where they can sort of blow off steam and you're not worried about breakables. I've worked with a client which was a 16-year-old girl, and she really still had some meltdowns. So what I talked to her mom about is that we really need to have more non-breakable items in her bedroom so that if she starts to have significant stress, mom just gets her into her bedroom, and in that bedroom, she blows, she can throw things, or she can do whatever she needs to do, and there really isn't going to be either damage to her or damage to anything very valuable in the family. And then when she's in recovery and she's come back down, then she can return to her normal day. So let's talk a minute about recovery. Recovery, usually you know that your child is in recovery because there's either no more yelling, screaming, whatever's going on, or kicking or acting out. They can be quieter. They also sometimes cry, that they're very, very upset, and then they just have this kind of release where it's like the big stress within themselves has now dissipated, and they just sort of relax and cry. And the way you test recovery is that you might go to their room or go to where they are and ask them a simple question. Gee, hon, would you like a tissue, or can I get you a washcloth to wipe off your face? And if they re-escalate right again, you know they're not quite done, and you just back off again. And when they are able to receive the kindness that you are coming forward to give them, they're pretty much in recovery. Now, when an episode has happened and they just are calming down and returning to the norm, you don't want to talk about it. Do not bring up what just happened. Try and get them back into the normal routine of their day, doing whatever is next. Oh, let's look at our schedule for today. Let's do this, let's do that. The teachable time to review whatever happened to cause the meltdown, you're going to do when you know they're solidly back in what's called parasympathetic nervous system, which is I feel calm and I feel safe. Then it could be talked about later, but that teachable moment shouldn't be right when they're coming out of recovery. Now, one of the moms had written in that the time the child is upset is increasing in time. So what's so important in your family is to do some detective work and figure out what are the signs leading up to this explosion, because we have to disarm it back on the left side of this bell-shaped curve. We have to disarm it by knowing what are the different factors that are adding up for this explosion to happen. And if it's getting a little longer and a little longer, we have to be a better detective to figure out how to get in front of it, because it's generally not one thing that causes an explosion. It's the summation of a number of things for our kids. So disarming a meltdown cycle often might involve, oh, they went too long without food, they got triggered by the same statement that the brother or sister said that always touches them off, or they're sharing too much space, or a variety of things that add up, and then you have the meltdown. So I just want you to know that in the middle of the explosion, no talking, no lecturing, not much of any input. Let them just be safe and get to the end of it and re-enter their normal day. If you have any questions, could you write them in now about any blow-up situations?
We have one question. It states that this family actually manages the emotional outburst well, but there's a heavy burden after the fact where this child, he's 12, is feeling guilty and hopeless because he feels like he can't help it.
So I think the key, I thoroughly understand that the child feels, I mean, it's very frightening for you to feel that your own body is out of control. So I think what's very important is that the parent keeps having a structure in the household that focuses a lot, and I'm going to buzz on pretty soon and stop questions so I can get a number of slides in that help you to give more structure in the home, to try to have more strategies in front of this rumbling moment so that there are fewer meltdowns. And to let the child know that what a meltdown is you just got overwhelmed. It's that, I kind of call it, just say, wow, you just got overwhelmed. Let's see what we can do to prevent you from being overwhelmed. And every little step of this child using a strategy not to be overwhelmed, and we're going to talk about calming strategies, is something you're going to positively talk about so that you build self-esteem, and it's the antidote to feeling that I'm a crazy person out of control, I'm a really bad person. No, look, some things added up for you to feel overwhelmed, and you're knocking down those building blocks. So let's talk about giving you some strategies here. One of the main things I think is very important is that our kids do not necessarily have a specific calm down plan. So some of you who may have your children in outside therapy may have a therapist who has given you a calm down plan for your child. If not, I want to give you just some basic ways of creating a calm down plan for your child. Okay. What I want you to do, first of all, remember I talked about those behaviors before the blow up that we called rumbling. Start to really notice what your child does that shows you they're anxious. Anytime you see anxiety behaviors. And what I do is I literally would put a sheet of paper on the inside of my kitchen cabinet or something. And when you notice an anxiety behavior, write it down. So you start to see, and you and your husband or family members become the detective. What are your child's anxiety behaviors? And start to make a list. Okay, that's number one. Now, number two, I want you to notice some things about your child. I'll bet that there are certain things you are aware of that calm them down that they like to do. They like to put headphones on and it's calming. They like to jump on a trampoline. They like to be left alone with their Legos. They like a variety of activities, taking a hot bath. They like walking the dog. They like, and what you want to do is start to look at them and say, what are their own self-calming behaviors? Is it looking things up in a dictionary? You know, what might it be? Make a list of those self-calming behaviors. That's the second list I want you to think about. Now, I take self-calming behaviors, the list that you have, and I want you not only to know that list for yourself, but I want you to write it down on a card or something that you easily have accessible to show your child. Because if your child starts to get upset, what you're going to help them to do is to link their anxiety behaviors to something they can do about it to make themselves feel better. So let me just start by saying, lots of times our kids do anxiety behaviors, but they don't know that they're anxiety behaviors. They don't know they're anxious. They just know they happen to wring their hands or pull their hair or do whatever. They don't know why they're doing it. They're just doing it. So what you're going to do is you're going to help them to link something. So when you look at bullet number 3, when you see anxiety behavior happening, wow, you're starting to pace the floor, or your voice has gone up much higher, or you're making clenched fists, you would point out to them. You need to teach them, wow, oh, hon, I just want to let you know you're making fists. I wonder if you'd like to do one of these, and then you show them the card, to make you feel better. You're not listing it to them. You're not labeling it, oh, you look anxious. Let's take some of those words away, because once you keep saying to someone they're anxious, they believe they're anxious. So I would just say, wow, you're wringing your hands, or your voice is really high. Would you like to do one of these things so that you feel better? Now, please notice also, I'm not telling the child, go jump on your trampoline or go use headphones. I'm not making that choice, because what I want is the child to pick. I want their frontal lobes to get engaged in deciding what would make them feel better. And then you just give them the opportunity to go do it. And then what happens, if they're willing to go do one of those calming behaviors, reinforce it. High five. What a good choice. I like that. At the end, do you feel a little better? What a great thing. You made a really good choice. And then over repetition, they start to identify, oh, look, I'm wringing my hands. That means I'm anxious. Or, oh, look, I'm starting to pace. Oh, I think I'm anxious. And then they go to their card, which will eventually become internalized in their head, and they will do one of those calming behaviors. Then what you do as you go along, let's say you decide something that's going to be very beneficial for your child is to take yoga or Tai Chi or karate, any of those things that help people to remain calm. Then Tai Chi and those kinds of options could get put on the calm down card. And if the child says after a while, I don't like that one, it's too babyish, take it off the card. So your calm down card for that child is going to be changing as they grow. And I know for you as a parent, I dare say if I said to you, take a minute, please, and think about what do you do to calm yourself down. Can you just take a minute and maybe anybody who's willing to write down, what is your calm down behavior that you do when you're stressed and it makes you feel better? Can anybody give me one?
I'm seeing deep breathing, walk in the woods, vacuuming, sitting on the porch.
These are all wonderful. And as a neurotypical person, you are more easily aware of what to do to make yourself feel better than our kids are. So what we just want to do is help them to link up, oh, wow, these things I'm doing, oh, that means I'm uncomfortable. Ah, this is what I could do to feel better. So that's what I mean by a calm down plan. And it changes, it grows, it changes. And what goes on the calm down card, you have conversations with your child now and then. Hey, these choices that could make you feel better, are they up to date? Is there something you want to change? Should we add something? I noticed that lately you really kind of like just getting immersed in one of your Harry Potter books or whatever. Put new things on, take off the old ones, okay? And that could be an ongoing plan. And eventually what you're going to do through repetition is children learn to self-calm. And that's a huge, huge help for them. So here are other things. Sometimes our kids don't know what kinds of words to use to rate how anxious are they. They may feel they're either 1, I'm completely calm, or 5, I'm a mess. And so what you want to do is teach them some words about I'm either, oh yeah, I can handle this, up to I'm a little nervous. Please don't talk to me right now. It's a little too much. I need some space. Or no, I got to get out of here. I need to go. But this is an anxiety scale. How many of you are aware of 5-point scales for many subjects? You could just write that in if you've used 5-point scales. But it's important for our kids who are anxious to know gradations of anxiety, not just on or off. Anybody aware of these 5-point scales?
A couple of people are saying yes.
Okay, so 5-point scales are part of this internal structure in the family that help a lot for your child to show gradation of something. So here's another way of looking at it. Certain things can be triggers for you. So what you want to do, is there a person, a place, or a thing that's a trigger for you? So what's the worst thing that could make me feel like I lose control as a 5? Or what are the things that never seem to bother you? You're going to put those down on number 1. So this is helping your child to identify their own triggers, from little triggers up to big ones. So again, these are structures you use if they would be helpful for your child to see gradation of change. This is the other one. For some of our kids, they have a huge reaction to a small problem. So what we try to do with this kind of scale is a little glitch is a small, small problem. Like, I don't like the lunch you gave me today, Mom. I open it up. And what kind of response fits that size of a problem? Oh, well, I can get something else to eat when I get home or whatever. Up to a catastrophe. Now, a catastrophe is like a fire. We're having an earthquake. Something terrible is happening in our family, and it may be perfectly appropriate under a catastrophe situation for you to yell and scream. So that's when they should use yelling and screaming. So if you have a small problem like I lost my toy, which is down on number 2, but I'm yelling and screaming, and you have this grid to look at, you'd say, wow, you lost your toy. That's the kind of thing that, oh, you're yelling and screaming. Are we having a catastrophe? Is the house on fire? Oh, wow, we're not. So let's take a look at a number 2 response. Now, what you're going to do with this grid is what's a little problem for your child up to a big problem is person specific. So not having a friend who can play with you today could be such a big problem for your child. It might not be a 3, it might be a 4. It depends on the child. So please customize these to fit your child. But what we do want to do is have your child some knowledge that yelling and screaming is to be saved for a catastrophe. You don't use it over my brother or sister play with my toys. And then, oh, wait, what's a response that might fit this size problem? You work on those. And again, it's small changes in your child's behavior over time. And this is showing them different ways to respond. I'm just showing you more grids. Sometimes the way they speak to you is not getting them a good response from people. So for a moment, take a look at number 4. I have a grandson. I have 2 grandchildren that are on the spectrum. And what I might do is say, so-and-so, would you like some more chicken? And what he'll do is he'll say, yes, go ahead. And it comes across so angry and so negative. And it's not even the words he's saying. He's even using the correct wording, but his tone of voice is very angry. And I need him to know that if you talk to me in a way that you're angry, then you probably, if you did that in school, there might be a negative consequence, or people are going to want to ignore you or get away from you because you're using either angry words or angry tone of voice. So they need to, when your child does some of these things, you need to stop and use it as a teachable moment. So what I did for my grandson when he used that angry tone, I said, wow, the way I hear that is you're very mad at me. Are you mad at me? And he said, no. And I said, well, if you say things nicely to me, I know you're not mad at me. Could you try again? And he said it completely nicely. He wasn't picking up, or he wasn't aware that at times he speaks in an angry or hurtful or threatening way, and he didn't mean to. So use those teachable moments to give them feedback of whether your voice comes across as sweet or your words are sweet. Sweet words are things like thank you for your help. And just fine words are, I don't feel comfortable with this. Could I take a break? And then you're telling them on the right side how people will most likely respond to them if they can change some of their either language that you use or tone of voice. Here's another one. I'm guessing for a lot of your kids, they either love something or they hate it. And they think that life is kind of binary. It's really good or it's really terrible. So we need to teach them, oh, you know what? There are actually gradations of things. There are things you hate. Well, then there are things that just sort of bore you. They're okay, they like it, and they love it. And it's teaching them to use words that aren't just black and white. There are words that are moving back and forth so that it helps them to know flexibility. So remember I talked about we're all on a family plan, so it works for parents as well as kids. So what I did is I wrote down some things that are chores, things that I hate. I don't like cleaning the bathroom. I don't really mind washing floors or sorting papers. I kind of actually like doing laundry, and I really like to cook. So I use myself and give the child examples that, you know what, you have to do chores. I know, that's awful. Everybody hates chores. But if we're on a family plan, and the goal of the family is that we take good care of each other and help each other to get what we need, then we all need to chip in. So you have chores. I know you hate taking out the garbage. And I have chores. I really hate cleaning the bathroom, but we kind of get through it. And I'm going to talk to you about incentives to get the job done. So it's going to be motivation, increasing motivation for some of you that are looking for that. So use your own examples to help them to see gradations of doing things. Now, these are just a variety I'm going to throw out quickly that, like cleaning your room. How often do you really have to do it? Never cleaning, oh, well, that's not allowed. But you don't necessarily have to do things constantly. What kind of frequency works in your house for often, how often do you need to clean your room? This is about a kid who constantly wanted to eat sweets. I don't know if any of you have children who want a lot of carbs and sweets, but this is a guy who, when he was unhappy and his anxiety was up, he was using food as a reward for himself. So his counselor was using opportunities to teach him what things really stave off hunger longer and what things make you want to eat again in 5 minutes. So candy, cookies, chips, and pretzels kind of always leave you hungry, but they don't really solve the problem, and that you could change what you eat and it helps with diet. Here's another one, which is what to do with your frustrations. What could make me feel better? So if I'm frustrated, eating, well, that doesn't really solve it. Talking about it, well, that helps. But sometimes distraction is good. So if you look at the middle, helps more. For this individual child, playing board games, going to the library, those are things that helped more. And then you can move up the ladder. This is sort of his anxiety reduction plan. So this guy actually learned that for him to decrease his frustration, now all of these, please be aware, is how you avoid blow-ups. You're giving him more strategies before the bell-shaped curve. He learned that if he does exercise, biking, boxing, walking, swimming, karate, those things can keep him calm for the longest period of time. For your child, everybody's list is different, but this is also anxiety reduction. This is what are the things that keep me keeping my frustration at bay. This is another great skill a lot of staff at AANE have found very, very helpful. Okay, do you ever have your child in a situation where there's some kind of problem or concern, like I'll just make up one. The concern is my sibling is always messing with my stuff. Okay, that's the problem that gets put in that upper box. Option number one might be what I'm doing now that is not too productive. I hit my brother because he's always messing with my stuff. And then with option number one, oh, I get in a whole lot of trouble and a lot of things don't work well for me and I don't like it. But your child might very well next time just do it again and again. So for them, the difficulty up above might often result in option number one, even if it isn't productive. So you'd sit down and have a conversation with them and show him this picture. So you print the page, you put the problem in the blue box at the top, and you show, okay, when your sibling messes with your stuff, what do you often do? Oh, well, I punch him out or I pinch him or whatever. And that's option number one. And you'd say to the child, how's that working for you? Well, I got in trouble, you took away TV time, there were various things and it might not be working very well for me. And you'd say, is there something else that you could do if he touches your stuff? Usually our kids will go, no, there isn't anything else, because they're not good problem solvers. They don't readily know what else I could do. And you'd say, look at this picture. See how option number one has been taken? But would you notice that there are two more boxes? So I know you can't think of something else to do, but what if we chat together and let's see if we can come up with at least one other option. How about if he touches your stuff, you go get me? Or if he touches your stuff, you put a sign on your door that says, private property, do not enter, and you're allowed to come get me to uphold that ground rule, something. But because there are these empty boxes in front of our kids, and they have a great sense of logic, sometimes they would be willing, even if it's just once, to try option number 2. You have shown them a visual that helps them for what's called flexible thinking. It's also helping them to do something called switching cognitive sets. So let me give you one other example. I'm a middle school kid and I can't open my locker. So that's the problem up above. I can't open my locker. And what do? Which usually is my response. I kick the locker and I get really frustrated and angry. That's option number 1. And then you would do a problem-solving session over what else could you do. And then you'd say often to the kid, is there something else I could do? Yeah, I can break my locker. Well, you could put that under option number 2, but I don't think it would necessarily get you what you want, which is the door open. And then because the box is there, you'd say, see that empty box? I really think we could come up with one other option that you could try. And then all you want to do is make this like verbal mini contract and say, could you just try it once and get back to me? Let's see how this new option works. If they're willing to even try it once, you've taught them a new skill and then positively reinforce it. Good job. You tried something different. I'm proud of you. You work on one small incremental change at a time. Now, when you use this is when they are repeatedly having a similar response that isn't working for a problem that they have. Okay, so this is just one more skill that helps them to change their mind, to do something new. Okay, this is another thing that has been really helpful for our kids. If we talk to our kids without using a visual, sometimes it's kind of in one ear and out the other. I don't know if you ever find that there are times you talk to your child, but words alone aren't working. So cartooning is an amazing way for them to learn. Are any of the kids you have delighted and they love anime or cartooning? Could you say, give me a yes or no on that one? Anybody?
We have a couple of people that are saying yes.
Okay.
There, about 4 people.
Okay, so what's important to think about, if cartooning is of their interest, then use cartooning to teach them new ideas. So here's just one example, and you can see how very primitive these cartoons are. They don't have to be very complicated. But sometimes our kids are a little blunt, and they may say to someone, oh, you look fat, or I really don't like the dessert you gave me. It's really awful. And they're honest. They're saying what they're thinking. But there are sometimes occasions where what we should say might be different from what we should think. So what you think is, oh, Aunt Tilly looks kind of fat lately, or no, I really hate this dessert. Those are things you teach them along in thought bubbles. It's perfectly okay for you to think that, but it doesn't mean every thought bubble should come out of your mouth. See how it's coming out of his mouth? And those are words that you say out loud, and that they need to know that there's a difference between those two. So let me give you another way you use this one cartoon. I want to play with a friend, and that friend says, no, I can't come, I have to wash my hair. And you've asked this friend to play with you 4 times, and each time they say, no, I can't play with you, I'm busy. So what's going on is you must teach your child that what they're saying in their words are evasive statements. I have to wash my hair, I'm busy that day. Those are the words they're giving you. But you know what? They might actually be thinking something different. And what they might be thinking, if it's happened 4 times in a row, maybe what's in their mind is, I don't want to play with you, we're not very similar. So it's worth your while to know that sometimes what people's thoughts are don't match what they say. And that's a new concept to our guys, because they're so honest. What they think is what they say. So it's a whole learning experience for them to know thoughts and words are not the same. So that's a common cartooning method, and there are lots of cartooning options. So there are many different cartoons. You don't have to make them all up yourself. There's software that can help you to know cartooning pictures that can help your child to learn through cartooning. And Carol Gray talks about this a lot, and there's a lot of different cartooning options out there that could help to teach your child new skills. So I want to just reflect for a moment for all the things I'm talking about. If you use visuals at times, whether it's posting the rules of the house on the wall, or using other visuals, whether it's problem solving, changing your mind, it sometimes can click for our kids in ways that just plain words haven't worked. So the graphic on the right there, when I see it, then I understand. For lots of our kids, visuals make the difference. If you give them something that they could see and then teach the steps of how to do what the visual says and just repeat and repeat, what you're doing is teaching them a new pattern. Now, for any of you who have ever done Weight Watchers or any kind of weight reduction, those kinds of things, or smoking reduction, they often have visuals. They often go step by step. You often have those kinds of structures that help you to keep on going when you're going to talk about small amounts of change in behavior over a longer period of time. We're using those same kinds of ideas for our children. So for any of you who have children who fight with each other, I love this circle. And the idea is, if you were to ask some of our kids, if you were to sit the special needs child down with the siblings and say, well, what are your brothers and sisters for? They would probably think that the purpose of brothers and sisters is to fight. Yeah, well, we don't get along, and he takes my stuff, and she doesn't understand. And they might think that if you were to look at all the things you can do with siblings, fighting would be a big part of the circle. But what's fun is to show them, like this one as an example, but then modify it to work for your child. Sometimes I bet your siblings play with each other. Oh, wow, siblings are for playing. Or sometimes a sibling can help you to get a job done, or help you to tie your shoes, or any one of a number of ways of helping. Siblings can be for that. And then the one that I think makes them laugh is, do you know, sometimes brothers and sisters get together and they plot against their parents, and then you get a big laugh. But the idea is introducing to our kids that there are so many different things. Now, you may have all different other options that siblings do in your family with each other that aren't necessarily represented on this pie chart, but the idea is talk about all the different possibilities of how siblings can interact with each other. It just gives them that different perspective rather than kind of black and white. Now, time management sometimes is a big issue. We want them to either hurry up, or we want them to be able to get their homework done, or everything having to do with time management. And again, the more we can teach them about the passage of time, the more that we can show them what time looks like, the better. So the top two, the second bullet and third bullet, I don't know if any of you are aware of the product on the market called a time timer. I'll keep talking, but if you would let me know if you've used a time timer, just yeses and nos, that would be great, and Joanne could track that for a minute. Or the other thing you can do is you buy a very inexpensive, cheap analog clock, and then with markers that are erasable, you can show them change in time by literally writing what 5 minutes is on the clock. Then they can learn what passage of time looks like. So let me stop a second and find out if any of you are aware of what a time timer is.
So the group is split. Some know about it and even say that there's an app for it now, and others haven't heard of it.
Okay, so just for you to be aware, whether it's an app on the phone or literally buying a time timer, and obviously if it's an app on a phone, it's infinitely easier. But what it does is it shows you in an analog way, it shows you time counting down. So the example is, imagine pulling the minute hand from straight up at 12 over to the 3. That's indicative of 15 minutes. And what the arm does is it clicks back down to 12, and it's showing the child time passing. So children don't feel, they have no good sense of time. But if they have a time timer going, which is the app, or if you have a wipe off clock to show them, I just want you to do this for 15 minutes, and then draw a line 15 minutes on the analog clock, they can see time going by. And it helps them. This is a motivation. It helps them not to feel, oh my God, I have to do this forever. It'll never stop. My grandson, as an example, says, Nana, you know there's fast time and slow time. Fast time is all the fun things I want to do. They're up in just a heartbeat, and it's over so quickly. And slow time is for chores and homework and things I don't want to do. And he believed that there were two kinds of time, fast time and slow time. So what they need to do is become acquainted with ways that they can learn. Do you know how you hate to take out the garbage, sweetie? Just for fun, let's time it. I've got a stopwatch on my phone. Let's time how long it actually takes you to take out the garbage, and you time it. Do you know that actually took 3 minutes? So it helps us to know that whenever you're going to put it into your day, it's really only going to take up 3 minutes of your time. So they learn that sometimes dreaded things really don't take quite so long, and it helps them to see how to use time. Visual schedules will help them to estimate time so that they can get the things done they don't want to do so much quicker, and they can get to do the things they really like. So if you have some kind of chores, it might be helpful for them to know how long, whatever their chores may be, how long does it take for me to do this? And then I could fit it into my day, whatever it is I need to do. But having some sense of time really helps. The same thing, homework. Often schools are always talking about what are the things you need to do. But maybe it would really help your child to know, let's say I hate math, because math sometimes is a challenge. Well, do you know that doing your whole math assignment, let's time it and see how long you need to set aside. And lo and behold, it actually takes you 10 minutes if you keep working on the problem. So time management and these kinds of structures help your child to get the job done. Here's another focus. I don't know about this particular group of parents, but lots of times getting your child to be ready on time in the morning can be a real challenge. Some of our parents are like, I got to get out the door to work. I have to do things, and my child is so slow in the morning. So one of the motivations that could be helped is, and this again is more often for young children, what's in your early morning box. And what the early morning box is highly desired activities that they can't get at any other time of the day. But these activities you get to do when you are ready to go. So if you have your clothes on, you've brushed your teeth, you've done whatever the morning activities are, which you could structure for them to know just what they are, then you get to go use the early morning box until the bus comes. It could be the newest book they want to read, it could be the newest Lego, it could be whatever, but they're activities that are used kind of a motivation to get ready on time. Here's another thing about getting ready. Here are some examples of pictures that you literally would take of your child, and it would be helping them to know some things about defining, how do I know if I'm ready? So this mom took a picture of her son when he was dressed and ready to go to school. He's got sneakers on, he's got his pants on, he's got his shirt on. We'll make the bold assumption there's underwear underneath. And then the picture here also is, yes, you have brushed your teeth. And then the picture on the right is you will need a coat, you have to bring your backpack, and you have to have boots for today because it's snowy out. So whatever is going to help the child to know how to get ready, then what you would do if your child comes down and he's not looking ready, you'd point. This would be posted again if it's a problem for you. The morning routine picture might be posted, and you'd say, do you look like this? Are you ready to go? You'd ask the child. Let the child do the thinking, oh yeah, I haven't brushed my teeth. Or, oh yeah, I didn't bring down boots because today I'm going to need boots. Or, oh yeah, I still have my pajama top on instead of my shirt. So these are visuals, again, so that you are just supporting the child, but let some of the visuals take care of reminding them what to do. For some of you, I don't know if you ever have a problem with your child with cleaning their room. Anybody, could you sign in yeses or nos while I talk? If cleaning your room is a particular chore that's pulling teeth in your family, sometimes it's because your child doesn't exactly know the components of what cleaning the room looks like. So the example is, the picture on here is for this mom. Cleaning the room means the bed looks like that. It's pulled up and straight. And if you notice, there's nothing on the floor. So perhaps that's that mom's definition of a clean room. So let me stop a minute and find out, do any of you have challenges with cleaning rooms?
We have a resounding yes, Jean.
Well, it's very common. So I think what's important is you have to let your child know, what is the definition of a clean room for you? So the picture on the right, a great way to start, because you're going to do gradations of change of their behavior, not everything at once. Okay, I'm going to be okay, kiddo, if right now all your dirty laundry is sitting in the red basket that I'm going to have sitting on your floor. Maybe that's first. The first and most important thing is not going to be like making your bed. For me as a mom, you're going to do this, moms, according to your own, your own wishes of what's most important to you, but maybe putting all your clothes in a hamper, that's most important as a start. Then you're going to add next, step 2, and then you're going to add last. And you're going to try to make it very structured to them what these steps are. And then remember that any undesirable task, if you want to get your kiddo to do it, have it followed by something they like. So remember that contingency management? As soon as your room is clean, I know that we can have a little screen time. Or as soon as your room is clean, you could set up a play date to go outside and do this or that with the neighbor child who you get along with. Whatever. The idea is have a backup of something very positive that helps them to be motivated to get the room clean. Here's another thing where you may use timers to say, okay, I wonder how long it actually takes you to do your step, which is picking up your laundry and throw it in the basket. Interesting. You're able to scoop up your dirty clothes and put it in the basket, and that actually took you no more than 5 minutes. Oh, isn't it helpful to know that cleaning your room is only a 5-minute step, and then you're going to go to step 2 and step 3. But you do gradations and show them visuals, and then the visuals help to do the structure with the child, so you don't have to say, now pick up your laundry, put it in the basket. You're going to not use that verbal input at all. At the most, you're going to point to the picture, and that it's not done till it looks like that basket, or it's not done till it looks like the picture down here where the bed is made. And you determine what's most important to you. The other thing is, I was talking again to a parent of a 16-year-old, and that 16-year-old was not cleaning the room often enough. And I said, well, is it on a schedule? Well, no, it just is a messy room. And I said, okay, then set up that room cleaning is every Saturday morning from this to that, or every Wednesday afternoon or whatever. And if that works, then you only have to do it once a week. If that isn't sufficient and the room's getting smelly because of dirty sneakers or whatever, then what you need to do is do it on Wednesdays and Saturdays, but put it into like the structure of when it's supposed to happen so that it isn't random. You would never walk up to your child and randomly say, go clean your room, it's really gross, I don't like it, because that's unexpected criticism. You put it into a schedule and then always have it followed up by something they really, really want to do, so that you would say, like, I want to go, I want my screen time now. Absolutely. As soon as, oh, should I check your room? As soon as your room looks like the picture, I'll know you're ready to go. And then the rules have taken care of checking up on quality. And then the child compares it to pictures. So I think it's important back at looking at our wording a little bit is to know your child's wording. So as an example, I worked with a kiddo who was an avid reader. And if you told him to put the book away and to stop doing something, that stopping or turning it off would be a trigger for the child to get upset. So instead, because he was such an avid reader, instead of asking him to stop doing something, you'd say, oh, we just put a bookmark in it and we'll come back to that in a while. Well, just switching that wording avoided trouble. And I can tell you for my grandson lives for screen time. Everything is screen time. And if you tell him to turn it off, you're asking for why, argument, this, that, and the other thing. But if I go to him and say, could you put it on pause for a second? He puts it on pause because he doesn't think it's being taken away. And then you say, we really need to have dinner now, and we're going to be able to come back to it afterward. To ask him to pause it is completely different to him than saying, turn it off, it's time for dinner. It's too finite. It's too much of a big, kind of trigger for him. So sometimes you can watch and become aware that small changes in your wording can avoid trouble. I don't know if any of your kids are really familiar with the movie Inside Out, that cartoon movie. So you could do yeses or nos while I speak. Inside Out has been a wonderful tool that we use with our population because it talks about there are different people who could be running the console up in your brain, who's in charge of your brain right now. So there's anger and sadness and joy. And because of that movie, I have found a number of special needs people and parents can use characters out of Inside Out, and it helps the child to see whether they're in anger mode right now, sadness mode, and then you could use a response that's helpful. I even know one client where the parents went out and bought the characters. There's joy, sadness, anger, and one other that was like snarky. But the child can use those physical objects to help explain who's in charge of their brain right now. So can I ask, I'll be quiet now and see the feedback on whether your kids have ever seen Inside Out?
They have seen Inside Out. There are a number of families who reported. Jean, I do want to let you know there are about 3 or 4 questions that have come in also.
Okay, am I correct? We're done in 5 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, so what I want to do, I'll just, we went over a lot of the words on the right. I want to just make sure. We talked about you being a detective. Why is the child having a hard time, and that you need to try and see what's triggering it. And that I'll go back to this, but the most important thing is once you've taught your child a new behavior using the structures we've talked about, these are just some samples here of all the different positives. Your goal eventually is within a day. You're going to try and say, when I look back about today is a very good day because I was able to give 3 positives to any 1 negative. So I would like to take these last 5 minutes now to please, this is talking about having more fun time, and I urge that you now do the questions, and let's see if we can cover those in 5 minutes.
Okay, excellent. So the first question is, the parent is wondering whether anxiety and depression is related to ASD. Their child who has high-functioning autism keeps getting compared to another child with anxiety and depression. And
okay. Okay, so let me address that one for a minute. One of the most common reported presentations of students with ASD is that they have a huge amount of anxiety. Now, it would make sense if you think about, if you have problems with emotional regulation, you have problems seeing another person's perspective, you have problems with making social connectedness, you have executive functioning problems, you could have some motor problems. If you think of the kind of array of difficulties our children have, That means all of those things are challenging them every day. There's no question. You would be anxious too. We're all going to be anxious if life is that difficult for you. So yes, our kids have more anxiety than the average child, absolutely. And if you had to get up every day and the things that are so hard for you remain, they're still hard the next day. They're still hard the next day. It's a slow change of improvement if the child is being taught skills. So you can also have some depression that you can't suddenly wake up and everything is all better. You have to just keep going. So yes, anxiety and depression do happen with our population. More anxiety. Depression often can start to kick in during the teen and young adult years because they're tired. They're tired of the same challenges which go on for quite a long time. So I'd say yes, it is very much a part of our kids' profile.
Okay, great. The next question is from a parent who has a 13-year-old son. She says, do you have any thoughts that when the child gets upset, he runs away? And she tries to get him to come home, but it makes him more upset.
The most important thing is that you have to do no problem solving or talking to the child when the child is upset. The only time you reflect on it and talk about it is when the child feels calm and safe. And then what you have to figure out is work on both your observations of the child, family reflections on what happens that triggers him to want to run, and then try to create a system that catches your child before, because bolting is, that's my blow up behavior. Remember the bell-shaped curve? Running, that kind of a blow up can be the bell-shaped curve. And it's very similar that you have to get in front of it and then try to introduce that. So as an example, if the child, let's say, runs out of the house, then, and at the moment, you can't seem to stop them from running out of the house, you make an agreement that if you need to go outside and run it off, it's a great thing, but I want you to run around in the backyard and do so many laps, and I'll come out and I'll time you or I'll watch you, but I'll be with you so that you can run it off. And for some kids, running it off is the positive thing that they're doing, so you don't necessarily want them never to run again, but you're going to control the running. First, it's running in the yard, and then could you run downstairs in the basement and go downstairs and run there, or could you run on a treadmill, and you shape it into something that makes you yourself as a mom feel safer and better. So you're going to change the behavior perhaps in small increments rather than just thinking that in one conversation the child could stop running. And then you have to figure out, again, why would a kid run? It's sympathetic nervous system, fight and flight. I don't feel safe and calm at this time. So you're going to slowly help to negotiate a little safer behavior of what to do with distress and a little safer behavior, and you're going to chip away at the what's happening before, and then figure out, can I go with you when you're outside or wherever he is, so that I know, because our family is based on we want to keep each other safe. I'm your mom, I want to keep you safe. So I would go at it that way.
Great, thank you. And then the next question is, how do you teach a child the value of exercise and anxiety reducing strategies and show them that it works? This person, their child is fighting it and doesn't use it.
I'd have to say that's a huge challenge. You can't say, I want you to do exercise because it works. You sometimes have to introduce it through any way that you can make the child try it once and make it a positive experience. So I often use the parents as an example. You come home from work and you're going to show signs of distress and, oh, what a day, I've just had this terrible day and I'm upset. I need to go for a walk. Gee, so-and-so, would you come with me? And then you're going to walk and the child is walking with you, and then you're going to be upset at the beginning of the walk, and then you're going to model calming down on the walk, and end it, whenever I take a walk, it makes me so hungry. I end with a little snack. If that's positive for your child, what you're trying to do is introduce a new pattern where exercise he sees from your modeling helped you. He tried it, and even though he thinks it's not for him, and it ends with a little positive of something. And so you're trying to create a new little habit. Another thing is kids may say, I don't want to exercise, I don't like exercise, but somebody they care about at school is going to try karate, and maybe he would try karate, not because it's exercise, but because he's doing it to be with a friend. So you try to come up with ways that it isn't perceived as exercise. It's just part of either something you do or a cared about friend does, and you just try to see how many different activities you can come up with that you can kind of slip under the radar. Because if it's something he readily or she readily identifies as exercise, they may immediately throw it out the window. I totally, that's common that you have to kind of figure out a way to positively frame it.
Okay, excellent. So there's one last question, and that is to do with the rules list that you spoke about at the beginning of the talk. And the question is, to what age do you think the list for family rules will work, and how many rules can you put on it?
Usually you have to focus on no more than, 4 or 5 rules. It can't be like a list of 25 rules. And the rules, so the reason I start by saying what's the purpose of a family, and these are the 3 components. A family, we are to keep each other and stay safe. This is the place for unconditional regard. This is where we care about each other. No matter what goes on outside in that world, we care about each other. And number 3, we help each other to get what we need. So if those are your basic house rules of why you have a family, then any kind of acting out or anger behavior, you've already got it covered, because we want to keep each other safe. A lot of different behaviors that might crop up are already covered in the basic 3 of what's a family for. And so you want to have minimal number of behaviors, because you can't have anybody remember a whole great big long list. One of your questions was how many, but I've lost the second part of the question. Tell me again, Joanne.
It was at what age, how old do you think the child will be when they'll still follow this list? Is there a cutoff? You're going to tune it out?
It's so specific to the individual, because I have worked with some 16-year-olds who still benefit from having certain things posted. Certainly teens, some teens, because our kids are sometimes presenting younger than their chronological age. So it's very student specific. And so definitely for some kids, whether it's using cartooning or using those visuals to describe, your angry tone of voice is really making me want to back off from you. Any of the visuals I'm talking about are going to be used into possibly the teen years. Somebody I think is 19. I think, a lot of these things are going to be challenging to be using for a 19-year-old. And you don't ever post it unless it's an ongoing problem. And you could say, counselors for adults, when you have couples therapy, sometimes say, why don't you make this rule for a while? You guys are only going to talk in the evening about positive things. So you make these temporary rules for a while, and even adults at times implement strategies like that when it's on a shortened time reaction. I'd say it depends on the family, and it depends on the person, but most of the kids that are listed here, 11, 12, 13, 6, rules could be used for a lot of those kids. If you can have some ground rules that therapists use with couples, and I don't see that there's, obviously pictures are more for younger kids, words are for older. You're going to have to make it age appropriate to the child you're working with.
Okay, great, excellent. So that's all the time we have for today. Jean, thank you so much for this presentation.
Absolutely.
Excellent. And I did want to let everyone know that Jean is presenting again next month for another part in this series, and that presentation is called Developing Effective Education Plans, and we'll be sending out the registration form for that today. So again, Jean, thank you so much, and take care,
And
everyone.
I thank you all for your participation, and I look forward, if you want IEP help, to having you sign on for next month. Bye-bye.
Bye.